It really is rather embarrassing when the government has to delete its own tweets to avoid confusion and misinformation and confusing the general public. And I'm afraid to say this is another one of those situations where I can say I was right and they had to do exactly that. But before we get into that, if you are new to me, I'm Daniel Shensmith, a barrister of England and Wales, and even if you're not new to me, even you've been watching for a while, please do hit the subscribe button down below. About 50 to 60% of you, it fluctuates, don't subscribe even though you watch regularly. And I'd really appreciate it if you did. That helps my channel grow, and I can help to guide you as to what the law says and to point out inaccuracies, to say the least, when they are tweeted out by our government. So let's get into this. So what are we talking about here? Well, you might remember this post here, which was put out by the Treasury that said, last week we committed to protecting working people in the budget. That is why we are not increasing the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. Click below to find out what else we're doing to support working people. But the big bold text in the tweet caption here says no increases to rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. All of which I believed was misleading, and I said as much. So again, I'm just going to remind you of what I said previously and to say that I called it. Take a listen to what I previously said in this video here. In my opinion, we have seriously reached a point where this government is putting out complete and utter rubbish propaganda. Now, despite the fact that we have two members of government, including the Chancellor herself, saying that the increases to employer national insurance, despite the big bold headline that says no increases to national insurance or VAT, does affect working people, the Treasury actually wrote this post. Last week, we committed to protecting working people in the budget. That is why we are not increasing the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. I do think this is false. This boldly says no increases to, and reading the next bit down, national insurance, which is patently untrue. And I wasn't the only one. The Shadow Chancellor also wrote to James Bowler, Permanent Secretary of the Treasury, and says as follows: I write with concern relating to misleading information published by the Treasury on X, Twitter, on the 7th of November. At the budget on the 30th of October, the Chancellor increased national insurance contributions by 1.2 percentage points and from 13.8% to 15% for employers. And also, obviously, reduced the threshold. As you know, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility said that the increase in national insurance contributions will impact working people through lower wages through reduced business profits. The IFS also said that an increase in the rates of national insurance would be a straightforward breach of the government's promise not to raise national insurance. Johnson's now referred to the post as dubious, stating that was a generous characterization. I would therefore be grateful for a prompt response to the following questions. Will you confirm that this autumn budget does in fact increase national insurance? Do you agree by claiming the government is not increasing national insurance, this information is misleading? What is the sign-off process for official social media communications? Are they signed off by your office as permanent secretary or political special advisors? Can you confirm officials were not pressured into publishing misleading information by the Treasury? Do you agree that it's important that official government social media posts adhere to the Civil Service guidance on social media, which states accuracy as a point to bear in mind when posting? Furthermore, will you commit to ensuring all future communications are factual? I look forward to your response. And that was sent by Mel Stride MP. And there was a successful response, because the Treasury responded and said, thank you for your letter of the 8th of November regarding the post on the Treasury social media. And before they actually capitulate, they do sort of double down and bolt on what they originally stated, which I still think is misleading. But they said the post was linked to the taxes of working people, and as such, the reference applied to national insurance contributions levied on employees. The fact that employer NICs is increasing was widely documented, most obviously in the budget document and the Chancellor's budget speech. Nonetheless, and for the avoidance of any doubt, the post has been taken down. I assure you that we continue to take seriously how the Treasury content is put out into the public domain and will continue to do so. So I, for one, take that as a bit of a win, although they didn't really admit that it was misleading and they didn't really apologize for it. And all they really said is, I assure you that we'll continue to take seriously how the Treasury content is put out into the public domain and will continue to do so. But Rupert Lowe MP also took this as a bit of a positive news and said, following the pressure, this disgracefully misleading post from the Treasury has been deleted. Now, where is the correction and apology? National insurance did increase. Now, quite frankly, I do think this warrants a correction post because this was indeed misleading. Now, the problem with things like this, as many other people have found out that have posted things on social media, it doesn't really matter how long they've been on social media for, they are still held accountable to it. And when a post is put out like this that is misleading, I really think that it ought to be corrected, and so that people that did read the original post and may have been misled by it will now get a better idea of what's really happened. In other words, it does affect working people because the increase to employer national insurance contributions and the lowering of that threshold is indeed going to affect working people. But that's not all I have for you today. We also have what I'm going to call the bookmarks section, because various things that I bookmark to come back and talk to you about later, I don't always get round to because I have but a few minutes each day to bang out a video for you among my other work. So let's take a very quick look through what else I've bookmarked on here, which may well be of interest. Now, there was obviously a lot of noise around VAT on school fees. I've covered this a number of times before, but I'm not going to stop doing so because it's ploughing ahead and the devastation is going to continue, such as this case here, because it appears that many people are still struggling to find places in their chosen school. Take this post here, for example. This says, hey, Bridget Phillipson, MP, how do you propose I transfer my children back into state education when this is the response from Cardiff Council? And if you can just about see it here, it says, good morning. Unfortunately, the comprehensive school and Cardiff High School remain full for this September's Year 7 intake. So this is Year 7 intake for senior school. This is not even sort of partway through secondary education. This is a brand new Year 7 intake for new schools in this area. It says, please let us know if you've made alternative arrangements for education for September so that we can ensure that our records are up to date. If you have any questions or would like to discuss community schools that have availability for September, please contact us. So this is essentially saying we can't help you, but let us know if you make alternative arrangements so that we'll update the records so that we can take you off the list of people that we can't help. But what do they expect them to do? Because what is the alternative, really? If they don't have a school available, they simply have nowhere to put this child. And that's not all. It appears that the government has grossly underestimated the number of pupils that are going to have to move out of private school and into the state system, and it is just not going to cope. The Telegraph reports that more than 3,000 private school students applied to join state school between June and September, according to data exclusively obtained by the Telegraph, and I will link this article in the description below. Now, I will endeavour to remember, but if I forget, please do remind me, and I will ensure that it goes in the description below. But a further 2,500 pupils have given notice to leave in January, according to the Independent Schools Council, which surveyed over 900 members to its organisation. And if that wasn't bad enough, it appears that it's also going to affect our armed forces, with almost 70% of Army families who shared evidence with the AFF said they would consider leaving the army if the VAT was added to school fees, and this situation wasn't addressed. As part of this report here, it says nearly 70% of army families who shared evidence with us stated that if there's no exemption or financial mitigation to cover the full costs of the VAT increase, they would now consider leaving the army. The AFF Army Life Survey 2022 evidenced the critical importance of CEA for service children. Those families who claimed the continuation of education allowance felt that it was a critical element of the package that had enabled the serving person's retention, citing its necessity in providing educational stability for highly mobile and dual-serving families. In other words, these army personnel routinely move about and they place their children into private schools because the state system simply cannot accommodate them. And with this VAT increase, 70% of them said that they would consider leaving. This is something that the Home Office itself has now realised is being difficult when they asked the private schools for a reduction on fees, but insisted that it was nothing to do with the removal of the VAT exemption. And that's still not all. Over on X, the Cut My Tax account says Rachel Reeves was not telling the truth when she told the BBC that her £1 million farm inheritance tax allowance could be transferred to spouses. The Treasury's policy paper says any unused allowance will not be transferable between spouses. Rachel is spreading misinformation. Goes on to say, if the farm is owned by two people, then of course you could then transfer that allowance to the other person, she said. Wrong. You think that at least she'd be able to understand her own rules. What else has she got wrong? So again and again, we come across information which is either misleading, wrong, underestimated, and just appears to be decimating the economy. Now, a lot of people ask me why I'm talking about this. Well, that's because it affects a lot of people. Just yesterday, I had a very nice email from somebody that I don't know, but obviously watches my videos, and I'm very grateful to receive the email to thank both myself and my learned friend Alan Robert Shaw from Art of Law, that somehow, just by doing these little videos, we've helped them to firstly have the confidence to bring a case to court, and secondly, they won the case for many thousands of pounds, for money that they were obviously rightly owed because the court decided in their favour. And without these little videos of ours, I suspect that they probably wouldn't have done so. At least that's what they said. So I'm very grateful to everybody that watches my videos, humbled by the response, humbled by the emails, and I thank you all for watching.